Okay. So as you look at your own dream, you can readily find the I in the dream, as you work through the dream. And I'll read you my dream in case you can't see it. In my dream, I'm in, oh, and by the way, it's okay if you didn't do this, but if you can, as you journal your dreams going forward, as you journal your dreams, if you can train yourself to write them in the present tense as if you're having it. Write your dream in the present tense. So this is my dream. I'm in the passenger seat of a car. My father is driving. My mother is in the back seat behind me. My brother, who is very young, is also in the back seat behind Dad. And my brother, is kicking the seat. Okay, that's my dream. So in this dream, the I in the dream, the ego in the dream, is not acting in the dream. The I in the dream in this particular dream is more of an observer. And some dreams present that way, where the I in the dream is observing things unfolding. And then in other dreams, the I in the dream is acting. I am running, I am speaking, I am going, I am flying, whatever, an action. Both of those things are worth paying attention to. The setting of the dream is extraordinarily important. The setting of the dream. My dream, I'm in a car and the car is moving. So if you notice your setting, if you can identify your setting, and sometimes we can't, sometimes it's an unknown place that we find ourselves in with no distinguishing features, but sometimes it's very recognizable as a building we're familiar with, or our childhood home, for instance, our church, our place of work, a school that we attended, these settings. That setting is a clue to what the dream is about. The setting is very important. The setting is a clue. And that leads to the first question. What is this dream commenting on? And so if the dream is set, for instance, at your place of work, it might be a comment on your work. Maybe not specifically about something going on at the office, but it might be something, a larger question about the nature of your work. Or it may be a reference to, where do I need to do some work? And it might have nothing to do with the office, but it might have something to do with inner work or relationship work. But if the dream is set in a place of work, that's a starting point. If the dream is set, for instance, in a childhood location, childhood home, childhood neighborhood, childhood church, school, childhood school especially, not high school or college, but like elementary school, it can speak to a need to revisit that time of your life, but it's always in service to going forward in your life. In other words, it might be that you have to remember something that you learned at that point in your life, or resolve something that occurred in that point in your life. It's calling for resolution, but only to go forward, to be pulled into who you're meant to be. So the setting is important. So what does it mean if you can't tell where you are? Or you find yourself in a house, a building, a structure, a landscape, with which you are unfamiliar. It has no corresponding place in your waking life or in your memory. Then we operate as if that is a place within yourself that you just don't know yet. We have such depths within ourselves that we are unaware of. And so when that shows up in our dreams at a place that I'm unfamiliar with, it's a place in me that I'm unfamiliar with. So what you might want to do is just in these margins here, we're going to make some notes. So you might put setting right here. And then just one or two or maybe three comments, maybe just one or two words about the setting. So each of you will have a different, this will be different for each one of you. You have a different setting, you will have a different association with that setting. In my dream, it's in a car. And for me, and this is me, for me, the car and the movement of the car has to do with my inner drive. That's what it has to do with, drive. So the setting has to do with my drive. And it has to do with progress. You know, I'm in the car going forward. So it has to do with something about progress. And that's about all I got right now. That's about all I have. I might revisit that idea if something else occurs to me. But for right now, that the setting of the dream, a car driving, has to do with this, drive and progress. Okay. The next thing we want to look at is there anything in your dream that is referencing persona? Is there unusual clothing that you're wearing? Is clothing referenced in any kind of way? Persona dreams, for instance, might include being dressed inappropriately, being partially undressed or completely undressed. It might include finding, I once had a dream where I was in my childhood home and I opened the closet of the room, my room in my childhood home, and found that the closet was much larger than it was in my waking life. And the clothes went on forever, just all kinds of clothes in that closet. And so for me, that was a persona dream about choices of how to present myself to the world, that I had a whole lot more choices about how I present myself to the world than I thought I did. And I took the dream from there. That was my initial idea about that dream. If that makes any sense? To notice clothing on another person or another character has something to do with persona. If there is a haircut issue, makeup issue, anything like that, it might be a persona dream. So look in your dream and see if you have anything along those lines. And you might make another note right here. If you do, if you don't worry about it. That's not what this dream's referencing. It's okay. But you might make one or two notes about that. I often hear dreams in which hair falls out or teeth fall out. And at some level, that does have something to do with persona. Not completely, not always, but it does have something to do with persona, about a loss of face, so to speak. Something like that. On the other hand, I've heard these, I have a friend in my dream group that dreams about going shopping all the time. She just has this kind of running thread of shopping all the time, where she's in lovely boutiques and she finds cute outfits and she finds attractive handbags and shoes and these are, and by the way, in Enneagram, she's a 3. If you know anything about Enneagram, that would not surprise you that she would dream of lots of persona stuff, because 3s are all about the presentation. And it's really interesting how that corresponds. So those are some examples kind of what persona might show up in your dream. Okay, but here's the really important one, and that is look in your dream and see if you have a character in your dream of the same gender, You might not. That's okay. The particular dream you're working on doesn't reference that. That's all right. My dream does, and here she is. My mother. And so she is a shadow aspect of me. Boy, is she. Yes, ma'am.
Before we go into that, there's a question about, as beginners, how would we know what the setting represented? Like you knew that the car was drive in progress.
Right, and that's just my association. That's not right or wrong for anybody else. I've often asked people when doing demonstrating group dream work and a car shows up, what might a car represent to you? And I get answers all over the place. Car represents freedom. Car represents independence. A car represents, movement and travel. It really requires you practicing asking yourself, what does this place mean to me? And even the feeling about it in the dream, if you can identify that. Is this a scary place? Does this feel like a safe place? Is it a beautiful place? Is it a ugly place? Is it desolate? Is it lovely? All of that goes into thinking about what that setting might mean for you.
Karen,
this is just, yes.
I'm sorry. My computer keyboard has locked up for some reason.
Okay.
When you said that, look at see if there's a same gender person.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's a part of your shadow self. Even if that is a person that you are very good friends with, you have a good relationship with, that is still the case. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Because that person might carry for you a very positive shadow. Remember?
Okay.
It doesn't have to be. Doesn't
negative.
have to be
Doesn't
a negative
necessarily
shadow.
negative. Okay.
That's
Thank
right.
You.
That's right. It can
that
be
helps.
A positive shadow. Okay.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So let's do this a little bit. So that shadow person. Now, if you really to do some pretty deeper work with this shadow, you could put the person's name on a separate piece of paper and really go to town on that, and especially with mother. Good grief. To try and discern what the dream is communicating to you by using this particular character at this particular time in this particular dream. For me, my mother was artistic and creative, and she was sharp in certain ways. For instance, she was a killer bridge player. You did not want to play bridge with my mother or against my mother. She could count cards. She could sew a dress for me without a pattern. She had that kind of mind. you know, and I don't have any of that. So that's a positive shadow aspect of my mother. She was also very emotionally needy person. Oh, she also had a wicked sense of humor, which I certainly appreciated, but I wasn't sharp. I'm not sharp enough to have. I mean, she was quick, but she was also very emotionally needy. And so if I was to go back to this piece of paper here, working on this particular dream, I would certainly put creative and artistic, and those are positive, but also I have to include needy, because that's my shadow. I am never going to let any of y'all see me be needy, emotionally needy. Nope. I'm not going to do it. No, I am not emotionally needy. I'm not. But my dream says otherwise, because here she is. Am I making sense? Okay, good. So this is a kind of, this sheet, and what we're going to be doing on this sheet is a kind of shorthand version of how to approach a dream in relatively quick amount of time. And we're going to keep going to this. We're going to keep checking back with this and see if we can identify some other things throughout our presentation today. Is this making kind of sense to you? It's a lot of fun if you have colored pencils or colored markers to do this with colors. And it has a name. It's called dream mapping. This is mapping a dream. And it's a great approach to a particular dream. It's a lot of fun also. I say it's a lot of fun, it's a lot of work to get a big poster board and do this and really go to town and do this kind of thing with all the characters in the dream. But we'll say a little bit more about that later, okay? So as you're working with your dream, we're going to begin to identify the things and the people in the dream that are telling you something about what this dream means. Okay. While I'm standing up, I've got to show y'all my tool belt. I have a tool belt on. Here it is. It is filled with magic markers because in our dream groups at St. James, we do a lot of this work as in our group work. We do a lot of this, and magic markers are involved. So my dream group gave me this great toolkit, which is covered with symbols. And that's where I keep my magic markers. Okay. Any questions about that so far?
I have a question. This is Sonia. So, say for example, I had a dream and your mom is in it. I don't know your mom, but but I might see her in completely different terms.
That's right.
But, so it's how I see that person. So
yes.
Okay.
Yes. When I was growing up, I was dear friends with sisters down the street, two girls, sisters. They loved my mother more than they loved their mother. So their experience of my mother is very different from my experience of my mother. Those two girls sat at my mother's bedside as she was dying. Those two girls were at my mother's funeral and did the readings. I mean, they just had a different relationship. So if we were doing this dream, and my mother's name was Wilma showed up in the backseat of their car, completely different dream. Good question. Okay. Yes. What it means to you. Excellent. All right. Now I'm going to go back to share screen now. Okay. And we're going to keep going here. I hope. Well, for some reason, there we go. All right. So we're back here with these folks with this. All right. I'm going to back up just a bit. And we're going to now skip down to this area, the area of the archetypes. The area of the archetype. Oh, before we leave shadow work, I did include in your packet a worksheet called Shadow Worksheet. And it kind of leads you through that what I did a few moments ago in identifying negative attributes to a shadow figure and positive attributes, and asking some questions that you can begin to understand what that character represents to you and what you need to do with it, and give some suggestions about that. And then on the opposite page, page 2 of this, is some suggestions on how to interact with that shadow, kind of to begin to look for when that shadow aspect pops up in you. You know, sometimes we're oblivious to it. And I'll give you an example of that later in a little bit as we continue to talk. But to begin to observe that when it pops up, to even make a visual representation of that shadow aspect, to paint it, to draw it, to make a collage or make some representation out of clay about that shadow, to even do some what we call active imagination engagement with the shadow. Write the shadow a letter and ask it why it's in your dream, and then watch for your next dream. And then I'll have some more suggestions about how to interact with your dream in waking life as we go along. So
Karen.
Let us, yes,
we have another question before you move on. If I have a dream with various places, great. People, activities, and a sequence, do I divide up the dream into parts?
Yeah. Okay, that's a great question. I kind of operate on the with the idea that all dreams that occur during a single night are one big dream. And so even when we have dreams that have these scene shifts, is what I call them. There's a scene shift, you know, all of a sudden I'm in an airport, and then all of a sudden I'm in my high school, and then all of a sudden I'm at home. Scene shifts. These are all, I consider them acts in the big play. The dream is like a big play that's showing us something about ourselves, and these are acts in the play. And so I pretty much operate on thinking that there's a thread that's going through what looks like very separate scenes, but there's some kind of thread that's going through there. And if I kind of allow myself to keep looking, that it might emerge. And even if I never figure out a particular dream, it's okay. You'll get another dream because our dreams want to be made conscious. They want to. I'll say more about that shortly. So my answer is it's all the same dream, and it's probably addressing, you know, the same idea, the same subject. I hope that answered. Okay. All right, so let's now talk about these archetypes. Archetypes are, as I said, the basic patterns of human behavior that all of us share, The archetypes are
Karen, look,
inherited, so to speak. They're in our, yes, ma'am.
we have one more question along that line. I have a dream, and
Okay.
after waking, dream the same thing again, and have had weeks that I dream the same thing over and over again.
Recurring dreams are like neon signs. Something is trying to be made known to you, and your waking life awareness is not there for some reason. So let me pause now and talk about that. If it is possible to write that dream down, a recurring dream down, and this is especially helpful if the recurring dream is a disturbing one. But to do this, some of this work with that we're doing today, to do that with that recurring dream, to at least make take a step toward it, do something active in waking life to engage that dream, including anything that I just said. If you're resistant to doing some journaling about it or doing some of this work about it, draw it. Pick an image from that dream and draw it, or write a poem about it, or do some creative response to it, and see if the dream changes. Often, as soon as we engage with that dream in some kind of active way in our waking life, the dream will begin to change. This is a good thing to do with nightmares, with very disturbing dreams, is just take one step toward it and watch that thing change. That's a tried and true method of helping children deal with nightmares, is to ask them to draw it. I dreamed of a monster and it was going to eat me. Draw the monster. That gives the child some control over that image. It's not quite so overwhelming. And by the way, children, just a FYI, children often have pretty gruesome dreams, nightmares, that right at the point of taking a developmental leap. So it's not unusual to hear of a kindergartner that's about to go into first grade have some disturbing dreams. Or I've given a presentation in high schools before to juniors and seniors in high school, and they've got terrible dreams full of blood, guts, and slaughter. But all of that is in preparation, if you will, for they're leaving their childhood and going into adulthood. And so often when death is represented in dreams, it signals change. It signals change. And so here are these young people dreaming all this mayhem, but it's because their childhood is dying and they're about to take their step into adulthood. So children having these wild, gruesome, terrible dreams are often on the verge of a developmental leap. And it helps if they can express it in some way by drawing the dream. But that applies to us as well. If you have a very disturbing dream or a recurring dream, if you will make something or draw something, it's a way to address it. Okay.
Erin.
Yes, ma'am.
If I may comment on that just for a moment.
Please.
When I was in college, something happened where I was estranged from an aunt that I loved dearly, had all of my life from childhood on up to that point. And after that, for years, I had a dream over and over again of seeing her approaching me, but never getting to her and never being able to give her a hug or get a hug. After I'd had it for years, finally, after I was married, I went to see her and I talked to her. And when I left, she gave me a hug. When I went home, I never had that dream again, but I have never forgotten that dream.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Beautiful example. Beautiful example. Perfect. Oh, thank you, Betty. Thank you.
Can
yes.
I have a question? And Karen, I'm a therapist too.
Oh, okay. Hey,
I
yeah.
had one call me this morning who has serious mental illness. And she said, God told her last night in a dream that she was going to be the next president of the United States. Do I need to try to interpret that dream with her, or I just told her, take your medicine, be sure to take your medicine. And I said, I've got to get on a Zoom meeting, but she wants me to believe her. And, but she has serious mental illness, and my concern is to take her medicine. Should,
Esther, I'm hesitant to tell you how to handle your client.
Well, I know, but should I give credibility to her dream and process it with her? Of course, this morning she called me at 7 o'clock, and I didn't have time, and I don't want to get in the habit of engaging her.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. So, my first inclination would be to begin asking, just ask questions about that. Just ask questions. What would it be like to be president? What do you get to do when you're president? What does it mean to be president? Just ask those kinds of questions. And that way you don't have to say you're delusional. Snap out of it, nor do you have to say, gosh, I think you're right. Book a plane ticket to Washington, but to keep asking questions about it. And with any luck, the medicine will, kick in. I mean,
do we give the same credibility when we know people are seriously mentally ill?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do, because it's still, the mechanism is still correct. What's happening though is that the ego is not interpreting that in a way that's helpful. So let me say something about that. That might be a good way to illustrate what I'm about to start talking about. President of the United States is an archetype. That's an archetype. President, king, ruler, leader. President is an archetype. And talk about executive function. If the ego has executive function, what does the president have? He is the chief executive officer of our country. And so to think about it in those terms, she needs, if you will, she may need some ego strength. She may need some so-called presidential strength in order to mediate between all of this delusional material that's coming up out of the unconscious and taking her over. Now that's an interpretation, and it may be all wet, but that's the possibility. Why would you need the president? Well, why would you need an executive function? Well, she does. She needs that executive function in her to be strengthened, so to speak. Remember, there's a president in her somewhere. It's just getting expressed in a way that's not quite helpful. Does that make sense at all, Esther?
I'm sorry, I unmuted myself. Yeah, but it also is there's a lot of grandiose stuff going on.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I just, and she's always coming up with some grandiose thing. I'm going to get millions of dollars. People are going to give me millions of dollars. And I don't want to digress on this too much, but she just called me this morning with that. And I just said, well, I've got to get on. I don't have time this morning. And, but take your medicine is about, that's still good advice. Take your medicine.
Yes, every time.
But when she gets real grandiose, I know she's not been taking that medicine. So
there you go. And so that might be the usefulness of a dream like this. is as a signal of a symptom.
But also as spiritual directors, we need to realize if this is moving into, if their dreams or their visions are not at all in reality, then we might need to refer to them, to somebody, but not to me, because I don't need any more.
I hear you. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, if we find Joan of Arc in our office or in our the place where we do our spiritual direction, again, that might be more than our might be more than we personally can manage and handle. And on the other hand, you know, Joan of Arc changed the arc of history in France, so we can't dismiss that completely. You know what? You and I are going to have to talk about this on the side.
Yeah, just move on now.
Okay. Okay. So here we are with the archetypes. All right. The archetypes. The word archetype simply means pattern or model. The word archetype does. And we carry within us inherited models of human behavior that contain a great deal of energy. And the best way to sort of understand them is to see how they appear in our cultural references. So I'm going to say more about that in just a moment. Let's see if I can do this. There they are. Okay. So the archetypal unconscious contains universal patterns of human behavior. And the most basic one, the most basic patterns of human behavior are masculine and feminine, male and female. Now, this is where I get into a situation when I'm trying to explain this idea. What I'm talking about here is not masculinity and femininity as represented in our kind of everyday language. What I'm talking about here are energies in the psyche, in the archetypal unconscious, that all men and women must share, that all men and women share, that we have to have both. If the terms masculine and feminine bother you, we can use the terms logos and eros. For today's work, let's go with masculine and feminine. For today's work, there may be other newer and better ways to express this, but for today's work, let's go with this. Masculine and feminine. Within the human psyche, the masculine aspect has to do with getting things done in the world, outward action. It also has to do with reason and logic, the ability to set a goal, make a plan to achieve the goal, and the energy to execute the plan. It has to do with maintaining boundaries. It has to do with exercising good judgment. So the masculine aspect within the human psyche has to do with outward action, planning, executing the plan, logic, reason, and boundary holding. Okay. The feminine aspect within a human psyche has to do with relatedness, the ability to relate to fellow human beings, but not just fellow human beings, and all types of relationships. Certainly a romantic relationship, certainly marriage relationship, but also any kind of relationship, relationships between parents and children, relationships between friends, relationships with colleagues, the ability to relate even, you know, with strangers from time to time. I mean, do you see the young woman who's checking you out at Walmart as a fellow human being, or are we so absorbed in ourselves that the ability to look her in the eye when she asks, you know, how are you doing today? And really look her in the eye and say, I'm fine, how are you? That is a point of relatedness. So the feminine aspect has to do with relatedness, relationship with animals, relationship with the planet, relationship with institutions. How do we do this? It includes the idea, certainly, of empathy, of the ability to put ourselves in someone else's place, to understand their feelings when they express those feelings to us, or just when they show those feelings to us. This is all in the feminine realm. In addition to that, the feminine realm is very, for want of a better term, it's material. The feminine realm does have to do with the material world and our self-care, the ability to take care of ourselves personally. If the masculine has to do with taking care of ourselves in the world, the feminine has to do with taking care of our bodies, making sure we eat right and go to bed on time and wear a sweater on cold days and all of those types of things. That belongs on the feminine side. How do we take care of ourselves, and how do we take care of the people we're supposed to be taking care of? That is on the feminine side. Both men and women contain both of those energies. Both men and women contain both of those energies. Now, I'm going to propose right now a very controversial rule of thumb when it comes to this idea. Now, and that is this. It seems like, and this might be biologically driven, it seems like most women come into the world with the relatedness aspect kind of already there. And as they grow up, or as they, throughout their lifetime, develop the masculine aspect of taking care of themselves in the world. That the relatedness aspect comes with the wiring, and the ability to take care of oneself in the world then is developed. It's learned, it's developed. A lot of that has to do with how a girl relates to her father and other men in her life growing up. Okay. It seems like most of the time, but certainly not always, that men come into the world ready for action, ready to do stuff, ready to act in the world, and that they have to develop the ability to relate. This is not by any means universally true. And as I am saying these words to you, I'm well aware that as a father's daughter, it was the opposite for me. I was a father's daughter, so I was an eldest child. Therefore, I was certainly my father's favorite. So I was pretty action oriented from the get-go. And as I'm going to demonstrate with a story in just a moment, I had to learn to develop the related side. So I'm the exception to what I just said. And I'm sure you can think of exceptions. You may be an exception. but for today's work today, let's think about this in terms of, let's think of it in those terms. And by the way, this is not dependent. It is not dependent on your gender identification or your sexual orientation at all. These are energies in the human psyche. Wherever you may fall, it is incumbent upon you to develop the other side, to develop the opposite. And throughout our lifetime, if we're at all conscious, we will do that. Okay. Any questions about that before I give you a good example of what I'm talking about?
No questions in chat.
Karen, this is
Yes, ma'am.
Patty. I'm just gonna say, as comment as to what you're saying. I was attending a conference and they were talking about androgynous.
Yeah.
And it came to me that, yes, what you're saying, but it was up to me to do the balance, to create the whole person that I was trying to and create it to be.
Yes.
To
Yes.
the male side.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Yep. That's the point. And our dreams, here's the gorgeous aspect of this. Our dreams will help us with that by showing us these aspects of ourselves that we might not be aware of. Okay. Now I'm going to introduce to you a couple of terms right now. Let me see if I can do this fancy thing. All right, I'm going to try this, y'all. So I said a little while ago that our shadow is often represented by characters of our same gender. So characters of the opposite gender will represent this energy that I'm talking about. So in women, when women dream of male figures, it is their own masculine side. It's their own masculine side. And depending on how he shows up, what form he takes, shows us where we are in that balancing that you just spoke of. Okay? And the same is true going in the other direction. When men, Roger, dream of women, female characters, then he is dreaming of his relatedness side, his side that has to do with relationship. Now, there's a lot of fuzziness in there. You know, that's not in concrete. I like to call that, it is a guideline, but it is not written in stone. So we have to.
Karen, could you repeat that? I'm sorry. When the opposite gender shows up in our dream, what?
Yes, like for women, it's that opposite energy. So for women, when a masculine figure shows up, a man shows up in our dream, it is our own masculine side. It's our own, it's the side of us that takes action in the world, as I described a few moments ago. It's the side of us that can hold our boundaries. Okay.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
when men dream of women, it's their related side, their relationship side. Okay. So so these two aspects have special names. Look at me, I'm learning a new trick. the aspect within a woman, the masculine aspect within a woman is called animus. Who knew I could do this? And in your glossary, you've got a good description of animus, and you've also got a handout about the masculine and the feminine in your handouts somewhere. Masculine energies, feminine energies. So when a man shows up in your, for women, when a man shows up in your dreams, it is your animus. All right. When a woman shows up in a man's dream, it's called anima. And these are terms that Carl Jung used in his work. Like I said, if these terms are, I don't know what happened there. Anima. Okay, so animus and anima. You'll note that these contain the same Latin roots for animate or animal. And it has to do with life. Our animus and our anima aspects in our psyche give us life. They give us energy. They give us a lot. But here's the thing. This aspect, this masculine energy in women has to be balanced. It's always looking for balance. And there's a tug of war between ego and these aspects of the psyche. Ego, by the way, always thinks it's in charge. It's not. It's always getting acted on by things in the unconscious. So a woman that has not enough animus energy, not enough masculine energy, cannot hold her boundaries. A woman without enough animus energy often depends on the men in her life to take care of her instead of taking care of herself, or at least having a way to take care of herself. But that leaves her open to being taken advantage of or even abused. So you've got to have some animus energy in order to set your boundaries, to have the capacity to take care of yourself in the world, so that you can have relationships with men that are more equal as opposed to dependent. A woman with an overdeveloped animus comes across as extremely critical, judgmental, opinionated, emasculating, and I basically call, if y'all don't mind a couple of bad words today, I just call her the bitch woman from hell. A woman with too much animus energy is decidedly unattractive. Now, she gets a lot done. She will absolutely get a lot done. But she is, as I said, decidedly unattractive. And each of us can go back and forth from being animus possessed to not having enough of this energy in the course of a single day, if not maybe the course of a half hour. We might all know, or we might recognize in ourselves, the ability to be a tyrant at home, but a doormat at the office, or vice versa. That we, maybe we know a woman who can be completely domineering and organized at the office, but when she gets home, she's a doormat. That what we need is the balance between the two. And for men also, if men do not have any anima energy at all, any sense of relatedness at all, he is a very difficult person to be around. He's basically a jerk. A man without the capacity for any kind of relationship will have a very, very, very tough time maintaining friendships over a long period of time, and certainly romantic relationships or marriages. And will often show kind of aggressiveness and power, lots of power push. A man with a lot of anima energy, however, that is not consciously developed, or can make him make his relationships very shallow. And he depends on the women in his life to carry his emotional life for him instead of taking responsibility for it himself. And again, the way we dream about these opposite gender figures will tell us about, they will tell us where we are in this kind of development. And this is when I tell my famous dream. I say famous because I tell it in every workshop I give. Dream that I had almost 20 years ago now, right before I left our family business and decided to become a therapist. So I was working on that transition, trying to decide that transition. And I had this dream. I had the following dream. In my dream, I am in France during World War II. And I am a member of the French underground. The French underground in World War II being the civilian guerrilla forces that were perpetrating acts of sabotage to the occupying Nazis. The Nazis had taken over France, and the French underground was responsible for acts of sabotage and helping smuggle people out of the way of the Nazi regime. It was extraordinarily dangerous work. Active members of the French underground rarely survived the war at all. And so it was very courageous work. And in my dream, I'm a member of the French underground. And I, along with other members of the French underground, had been captured by the Nazis. And we were being held, a group of us were being held in a room together, a very rustic looking place with a table in the middle of the room. All of us were standing up. The sense of fear and tension in the room was overwhelming in the dream. We were all aware that the Nazi officers were in the next room deciding whether to shoot us now or shoot us later. That's how dire the dream was. It was one of those terrible dreams where you wake up heart pounding. Now, by the time I had that dream, I had been working with my own dreams 15, 16, 17 years. And I had, after I calmed down for a little bit and put my mind to it, I had to figure out what in the world that was all about. And then it came to me as I worked with the dream, the Nazis were my animus energy. Way overdeveloped Nazi animus energy. When we think about Nazis, they were aggressive, brutal, goal-oriented. They were so far outside of human relatedness. So my dream was giving me a hyperbolic picture that I had been captured that the way I was operating in the world was as a Nazi, as that. And I had no awareness of it. I am telling you now, I had no awareness of it. I thought I was just getting a lot done. I really did. Now, at the time, I was still at our family business. And so I could almost excuse myself for giving orders to our employees. In retrospect, I have no idea how I was coming across as I was giving those orders. Probably very badly, probably like a Nazi. But what I understood as I continued to work with this dream at the time was it wasn't so much at the store, it wasn't so much at the business that this dream was concerned about. It was how I was treating Jeff and Zach, my husband and my son. And I was in an effort to hold together again, career. But by the time I had this dream, Zach was a teenager, senior in high school. You know, career, Zach's senior year, just household, just, I was just basically ordering people around. Every once in a while, Jeff would say to me, I wish you could hear how you sound. I wish you could hear your tone. Well, I said, yeah, get over it. Well, that was typical Nazi response right there. Yeah, get over it. But this dream really hit me over the head. It really hit me over the head. I had to do a great deal of self-examination. Is this the person I want to be? Is this the woman I want to be? Is this? No, the answer was no. So how do I then amend my life? How do I get these Nazis, this Nazi aspect of me? I had to own this, y'all. I had to own, it was terrible. It was a terrible thing to be made aware of. And how was I going to corral these guys so that, you know, I didn't act like a Nazi to people that I love more than anything? How was I going to do this? So that's when I started seeing the Jungian analyst that I see, and to this day. And this was the first dream I ever took to her. And let me just say, this is always a work in progress. Those Nazis keep showing up. They do. Every so often, I get a dream where they show up. And I know I have now ventured over into that realm again. And I have to check myself. I have to check myself. This is what becoming conscious is all about. Now, it's important to know I will never rid myself of those guys. They are in me. They are in me. What I can do, though, is they are in here. What I can do, though, is keep an eye on them. What I can do is stay conscious when I veer off into that. Nazis are all about power. They're all about power. And the opposite of love is not hate, nor even indifference. The opposite of love is power. And so I have to really watch these guys when they show up. I just have to watch and watch myself. Now, here's an interesting little side note. Why did I get Nazis? I did not live during that time. I've never been to France. By the way, all my Nazi dreams take place in France. I don't know why. I've never been to France. I did not live during these times. However, my grandfather was born and raised in Frankfurt, Germany. I think I told y'all last night, I grew up in the Lutheran church. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother, was the daughter of German immigrants. My grandparents spoke German to one another when they did not want the children or the grandchildren to understand what they were talking about. There were references to Grandpa's homeland throughout their home. When I was 14 and my cousin Liz was 12, Grandma and Grandpa took us to Germany to meet the relatives. My grandfather's sister was killed during the war. Now, that's in me. All of those experiences are in me. They're in me. And that's why that got expressed the way it did, instead of, I don't know, terrorists or any other kind of dark masculine figure. I got it this way, and boy, I knew what it meant. It hit home pretty quickly. So I'm going to pause now and let anybody ask a question about that. I hope that was illustrative of what I'm talking about, these energies that are within us, how they can express themselves and show us something about ourselves that we need to know. Any questions about that? Okay. So that's an example of, in me, of an overdeveloped animus. And that's also an example of how our dreams can show this to us. You know, that one right there changed my life. Now, I've had a number of dreams that have had profound effect on the direction of my life, but that one right there, I'm telling you, I think it saved my marriage. I really do. And I have a good relationship with my son and my grandchildren now because of this, because, whoo, you know, I pulled back on. Yes, ma'am.
Are there multiple animus and anima figures in the psyche for one individual?
Absolutely. Innumerable. Yes, innumerable. This here, you know, a few minutes ago I said if waking consciousness is the size of the room that you're in or the house that you're in, and the personal unconscious is the size of Alabama, the archetypal unconscious is the size of the world. Do you remember at the beginning of my presentation, let's see if I can get us there. There. All right. There's waking consciousness. There's the personal unconsciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the collective. So if we think about it in those terms, the collective or archetypal is the water in which we swim, so to speak. So this is our waking consciousness. This is our personal unconscious. And this is the collective. So those archetypes, and I'm going to say more about archetypes in just a second, or those figures can show up in innumerable ways. Think about the facets of a gem, you know? If you think about a gemstone, a diamond, for instance, that's cut into facets, that animus aspect is like that gemstone. And depending on the dream or what you need to see, that particular facet is turned to your attention. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Another thing I've often heard of the anima is containing the visual image for a man of his soul, the energy of his soul. And you know, you hear about the anima woman. Some women are sort of more, I don't know, their energy draws that kind of thing, the anima energy. You think of that story like of Jacob, you know, his uncle wanted him to marry Leah because that was the oldest daughter, but his focus was on Rachel. Something about the soul and the anima.
Thank you for saying that. Absolutely right. Rachel was his soul. The anima energy in a man's psyche has to do with his soul. And all you have to do is look at Church Latin, because that's the word for soul in Church Latin. That
Question.
is, yes, there he is. Hi, Roger.
I'm guessing, so verify or correct me, that this instead of Nazi energy for you, the appearance of the negative energy might have come as a shining angel. I mean,
Well, for me,
or is it always well, is it always the negative aspect of the opposite energy?
oh, no. I see what you're saying. No, absolutely not. I have, I had for many years prior to me leaving the luggage business, I had a recurring character that showed up in my dream that happened to be one of my classmates from school. And in the dream, I was always, and I had lost touch with him. I did not have waking life conscious communication or connection with him at all. But in my dream, when he showed up, I was always so happy to see him, so happy to see him. Just like a reunion of soulmates. And it didn't have a sexual or sensual overtone. It was something else. And that's an example of a positive animus energy for me. And I finally figured out why I got him. I finally figured this out. It took a long time for me to figure this out, because after I left the luggage store, he stopped coming to my dreams. And I figured it out. After college, he went to become an undercover narcotics detective person in Dallas, Texas. And for fun, he took up skydiving and motorcycle racing for fun. So obviously this guy is a risk taker, adrenaline junkie. I don't know what you call all that, but it finally communicated to me risk. He was coming to me to bring to me in my consciousness the ability to take a risk. And it was a huge risk for me to leave the family business and start all over again in a new career. And once I made that leap, once I made that step, I didn't need him anymore. So he didn't come back. So that's an example of a very positive animus energy. Does that make sense?
Yes. So my supposition is correct that the opposite, my opposite would be the feminine energy. And so
Yes.
that can show up as either positive or negative for me.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So let's keep going. Oh, how are we doing time wise? We're getting close to the noon hour. How's everybody doing? We absolutely can take this up when we reconvene at 3 o'clock. How's everybody doing with this? Anybody want to give me or Elizabeth some feedback on are you?
Personally, I don't know if I can take any more in and might need to move around. That's just on a personal level.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of, because I feel like I've been talking a long time. So why don't we?
I feel
Karen,
I feel the same.
Yeah, right. I'm with you. Okay.
Karen, let me give you this question.
Why don't we take our break now and let's.
There's a question on the board. What if a woman in the dream has a strong animus energy and vice versa, the male in your dreams have a strong anima energy?
That is such a great question. Now we're really getting into something deep. And so you still have to look at it as presented. You just look at it. What are the characteristics of that character showing me in this dream? Is this somebody I know in waking life? Is this person showing me in waking life a nice balance of the masculine and the feminine energies? Or are they showing me the out of balance that I need to tend to in myself? That's the question as we look at this, you know, at this particular character. You know, if this is, you know, Xena, a warrior princess, showing up with all of that masculine aspect to it, you know, does that mean the overdevelopment in me, or do I need more of it? Do I need to be Xenia's warrior princess? You know, that's the question, and that's the discernment. That's the discernment that is the job of the ego. The ego has to make this discernment, but with a open heart and a humility, you know, willing to see what's there. I'm telling you, that Nazi dream really humbled me big time, big time. So I hope that answered that question. Any other questions? Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Whoops, here we go. Any other questions before we take our break?
I do have a question on the calendar, on the timing. Do we come back at 3 or at 3:15?
We will start back up at 3:30. So between 3:15 and 3:30, start coming back in. So we can start at 3:30.
Okay.
So I have a question before we leave this. Can I ask?
Yes,
okay.
Certainly.
Okay, so if the person in the dream that you're interacting with is a male persona, a male person, but he is very very tender, very compassionate. Okay, so how does that kind of translate as far as that male persona within myself, I guess? How to engage that? Well,
so again, so and you don't have to answer me, but is this a person that you know in your waking life?
No.
Okay, this is strictly a dream character then?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So again, as presented, this sounds like a very positive aspect, a very positive aspect that's got a good integration, right, of both masculine and feminine aspects, relatedness, as well as being a man. And so do you have that? Do you need that? Is it showing you what you need? Is it showing you what you have? And then the other details around the dream give some clues as to what okay, what do I do with this? You know, how it unfolds. When I saw my friend Tony in my dreams, all those dreams, you know, he presented that way. I was so happy to see him. He was so happy to see me. It was so it had such a positive feeling around it. It was just a wonderful feeling. But there was a piece of him that was trying to get in touch with me, so to speak. And it was that piece that was more comfortable with risk. Okay. But I didn't figure that out for a long time. So, you know, but I'm going to give you some things to do later on in our weekend that you can engage that character in a way that might give you some answers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great.